not normal. And somewhere deep inside, you already know this. You feel it in the way crowded rooms make your chest tighten, in the way small talk feels like sandpaper against your soul, in the way you'd rather sit alone in the dark than pretend to enjoy another hollow conversation about nothing. They've noticed too. The way you slip away early, the way you decline invitations with elaborate excuses, the way your eyes glaze over when they talk about their weekend plans, their social calendars, their endless need to be yishui, seen. And they've labeled you for it. Antisocial, depressed, unfriendly, cold. They've made your silence into a symptom, your solitude into a sickness that needs curing. But what if they're wrong? What if the thing they call your weakness is actually your greatest strength? What if your need for silence isn't avoidance, but traljapon discernment? What if your intolerance for superficiality isn't a flaw in your character, but a refinement of your consciousness? What if you're not broken at all? What if you're just Janjadik awake in a world that's still sleeping? This is not a video about fixing yourself. This is about recognizing what you already are. This is about understanding that your sensitivity, that thing you've apologized for your entire life, is not a burden to overcome, but a gift to protect. Because while they're out there chasing noise, you've been learning to hear something they've forgotten exists. The sound of your own soul. Let's start with the truth they won't tell you. You were never meant to fit in. Not because you're defective, not because something went wrong in your development, but because you were born with your skin turned inside out, every nerve exposed, every sensation amplified, every interaction leaving marks they can't see, but you can feel. They call it sensitivity, introversion, social anxiety. They pathologize it, medicalize it, turn it into another disorder that needs managing. Another deviation from the norm that requires correction. But here's what they don't understand. You're not refusing the world. You're refusing the performance of the world. There's a difference. The world they've built, this circus of constant stimulation, this carnival of shallow connection, it wasn't designed for people like you. It was designed for those who can skim the surface and call it swimming, for those who can consume noise and call it music, for those who can collect faces and call it friendship. You can't do that. And it's not because you lack the capacity. It's because you lack the coined tolerance for fakery. When you walk into a room full of people, you don't just see bodies, you feel the undercurrents. The performance anxiety masked as confidence, the loneliness disguised as laughter, the desperation hidden behind perfectly curated smiles. You absorb the frequencies they broadcast, the emotional radiation they emit, and it exhausts you. Not because you're weak, because you're awake. While they're playing the game, you're seeing through it. While they're performing connection, you're starving for something real. And the gap between what is and what could be, that space between the shallow and the sacred, it tears at you. So you retreat. You go home. You close the door. You dim the lights. And finally, you can breathe. They call it isolation. You call it survival. They see loneliness. You feel relief. Because in the silence of your own space, you're not being drained. You're not being invaded. You're not being asked to shrink yourself into something digestible, something convenient, something probably normal. In solitude, you're allowed to be whole. And that terrifies them, because your comfort with aloneness threatens their entire worldview. It suggests that maybe, just maybe, their constant need for external validation is the real pathology, that their inability to sit with themselves is the actual disorder. Your solitude holds up a mirror they don't want to look into, so they project. They worry about you. They say you're missing out. They insist that something must be wrong, that you must be depressed, that you need to chokus get out there and live a little, but you already know the secret they're running from. Sometimes the loneliest place in the world is a room full of people who don't understand you. And sometimes the most profound connection you'll ever experience is the one you have with yourself. Carl Jung once said, "Loneliness does not come from having no people around you, but from being unable to communicate the things that seem important to you." Read that again. He didn't say, loneliness comes from being alone. He said it comes from being all unseen, even when surrounded by others. And this is where everything inverts. Because what you've been calling your problem, your retreat, your silence, your need for solitude, it's not the disease. It's the cure. It's your psyche's immune response to a toxic environment. It's your soul refusing to be poisoned by superficiality. Jung understood something that modern psychology has forgotten. The journey inward is not regression. It's individuation. Individuation. Let that word settle into you. It's the process of becoming who you actually are, rather than who they told you to be. It's the separation of your authentic self from the collective masks, the social scripts, the inherited expectations that were never yours to begin with. And it requires solitude, not as punishment, not as exile, but as laboratory. Jung again, the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. But you cannot become yourself in the noise. You cannot hear your own voice when you're drowning in theirs. You cannot discover your truth when you're busy performing their fiction. The crowd demands conformity. It rewards mimicry. It punishes deviation. Solitude demands authenticity. It rewards depth. It reveals what's real. This is why your alone time feels so necessary, so non-negotiable, so sacred, because it is. It's where you do the most important work a human being can do, the work of becoming. While they're out there collecting experiences like currency, you're in here excavating the self. While they're accumulating social capital, you're discovering psychological sovereignty. While they're building networks, you're building a soul. Jung wrote, "Your visions will become clear only when you can look into your own heart. Who looks outside, dreams. Who looks inside, awakes." You are not sleeping through life in your solitude. You are waking up to it. Every hour you spend alone, reading, thinking, feeling, processing, you're doing what most people are too terrified to do. You're meeting yourself, the real you, not the version that performs at dinner parties, not the persona that says the right things at the right time, but the raw, unfiltered consciousness that exists beneath all the conditioning. And that consciousness, it doesn't need their approval. It doesn't need their validation. It doesn't need their permission to exist. Jung understood that the hermit is not running away from life. The hermit is running toward it, toward the only life that matters, the interior one, the one that cannot be curated, cannot be photographed, cannot be liked or shared or commented upon, the one that is yours. This is the path of individuation, and it is walked alone, not because you're avoiding others, but because you're finally, courageously confronting each trog yourself. And in a world that teaches us to fear our own company, that is the most radical act of all. Now let's cut deeper. Let's talk about what they're really afraid of when they see you choosing solitude. It's not your loneliness that disturbs them. It's your contentment with it, because your peace threatens their panic. Think about it. From the moment you were born, you were trained to believe that happiness lives outside of you, in achievement, in approval, in accumulation. In other people's eyes, you were taught that to be alone is to be incomplete, that connection equals crowds, that silence equals sadness, that if you're not constantly stimulated, constantly engaged, constantly plugged in, then something is fundamentally wrong with you. This is not accidental. This is moi programming. A society built on consumption cannot afford citizens who are content with themselves, because contentment doesn't buy. Contentment doesn't consume. Contentment doesn't need the next product, the next distraction, the next empty promise of fulfillment. So they pathologize it. They turn your natural need for quiet into social anxiety disorder, your preference for depth into avoidant personality, your selective energy into depression. They medicalize your boundaries and call them symptoms. But here's the truth they don't want you to know. Your withdrawal is not a wound. It's discernment. You're not avoiding people. You're avoiding the sound toxicity that often comes with people. The small betrayals, the casual cruelties, the exhausting performances, the transactional nature of modern relationships where everyone is using everyone else for validation, for entertainment, for distraction from their own inner void. You've been to that void. You've sat in it. You've learned that it's not a void at all. It's a shu womb. It's where transformation happens, where clarity emerges, where you strip away everything false and find what's true. And once you've tasted that truth, the lies become unbearable. This is why parties drain you, why networking feels like prostitution, why casual friendships feel like empty calories that leave you hungrier than before. It's not social dysfunction. It's our standards. You're not antisocial, you're anti-superficial. And they can feel it. They can sense that you're not playing the game, that you're not impressed by their masks, that you see through the performance to the fear beneath it. And it makes them uncomfortable. So they project their discomfort back onto you. They say, "You're the one with the problem. You're the one who needs to change. You're the one missing out." But what are you missing out on exactly? Shallow conversations that leave you feeling emptier. Relationships built on convenience rather than connection. The exhausting maintenance of personas that have nothing to do with who you actually are. They call it socializing. You call it sheer self-abandonment. Because every time you force yourself into their world, you feel yourself disappearing, not growing, not expanding, disappearing. Your edges blur, your voice gets quieter, your truth gets smaller, until you go home, close the door, and remember who you are. This is the psychological autopsy. You are not the problem. The culture is. A culture that worships extroversion and pathologizes introspection. A culture that mistakes noise for vitality and silence for death. A culture so terrified of stillness that it will invent 1,000 distractions to avoid sitting alone with itself for even 5 minutes. And you're the one brave enough to sit in that stillness. You're the one willing to feel what they're running from. You're the one doing the actual work of being human while they're busy performing humanity. So when they worry about you, remember, they're not worried about your well-being. They're worried about their worldview. Because if you can be happy alone, then maybe everything they've been told about happiness is a lie. And that possibility terrifies them. There is an ancient archetype that lives in every spiritual tradition across human history. The hermit, the mystic, the wanderer in the wilderness. Not the exile, not the outcast, but the seeker, the one who walks away from the village, not because they hate the village, but because they've heard a call the villagers cannot hear, a summons from something deeper, something truer, something that cannot be found in the marketplace of opinions and expectations. This is you, not broken, not damaged, but called to a different path, one that doesn't make sense to those who measure life in social metrics, one that looks like loss to those who've never experienced the fullness that comes from within. In the tarot, the hermit stands alone on a mountain peak, holding a lantern, not searching for others, not lost, but illuminated, elevated, removed from the chaos below, so he can see clearly what those in the valley cannot. This is not isolation. This is elevation. This is not running away. This is climbing toward you. And what are you climbing toward? Let's be explicit about this. You're climbing toward self-knowledge, toward inner authority, toward a relationship with yourself so solid, so unshakable, that you no longer need external validation to know your worth. You're climbing toward psychological sovereignty, the ability to stand alone in your truth, even when everyone else is standing together in comfortable lies. You're climbing toward what the mystics called enlightenment, and what Jung called individuation, and what you might simply call freedom. Freedom from the tyranny of other people's opinions. Freedom from the exhausting performance of normalcy. Freedom from the prison of constant comparison, constant judgment, constant measurement against standards that were never yours. This is the hermit's journey, and it is sacred. Not easy, not comfortable, but sacred. Because while they're out there seeking themselves in mirrors, in other people's reactions, in social media metrics, in the approval of strangers, you're seeking yourself in silence. And silence, real silence, is the only place where truth lives. It's where you hear the voice beneath the voices, the intuition beneath the shoulds, the knowing beneath the noise. The hermit understands something profound. You cannot find yourself in the crowd. You can only find reflections of the crowd's expectations. You can only find the versions of yourself that they're willing to accept. But the real you, the uncensored, unperformed, unfiltered consciousness that is you, that exists only in solitude. This is why your alone time is not negotiable. It's not a luxury. It's not self-indulgence. It's maintenance. It's the space where you remember yourself after the world has tried to make you forget. Every hermit knows this. Every mystic has spoken it. Every prophet has withdrawn to the desert, to the cave, to the mountain, before they could return with their message. Because the message doesn't come from out there. It comes from in here. And you cannot hear it when you're drowning in their noise. So you retreat. You withdraw. You create sacred space between yourself and the machinery of culture. Not forever. Not necessarily. but for as long as it takes to remember who you are when nobody's watching. This is resistance. This is rebellion. This is the most radical political act in a society that profits from your distraction. You refuse to be distracted. You choose presence over performance, depth over breadth, quality over quantity, being over seeming, and in doing so, you become dangerous to the system that needs you scattered, uncertain, constantly seeking outside yourself for the answers that only live within. The hermit doesn't reject community. The hermit rejects conformity. The hermit doesn't hate people. The hermit honors them too much to meet them with anything less than authenticity. And authenticity requires solitude. It requires the courage to disappoint others in service of being honest with yourself. This is your path, not because you chose it, necessarily, but because it chose you. You were born with the hermit's temperament, the seeker's sensitivity, the mystic's intolerance for illusion, and the world will never understand that. The world will call you back, call you out, call you broken. But you're not broken. You're Yuled awake. And once you've awakened, you can never go back to sleep. Now let's talk about what they don't want you to realize. The system needs you distracted. It needs you fragmented, scattered, constantly seeking, constantly comparing, constantly consuming the next thing that promises to fill the emptiness they created in you in the first place. And the most effective way to keep you distracted, keep you connected. Connected to screens, to feeds, to the endless scroll of other people's curated lives, to the performance theater of social media where everyone is competing for attention, for validation, for proof that they exist. They've turned connection into addiction, community into consumption, relationship into on transaction. And you felt the trap before you could name it. That's why you pulled away. Not because you're antisocial, but because you're anti-exploitation. You recognized, maybe unconsciously, that modern socialization has become a marketplace, where attention is currency, where vulnerability is content, where even friendship has been gamified into metrics, likes, comments, shares, followers. You saw it, and something in you recoiled, because you remember a different kind of connection. Or maybe you've never experienced it, but you sense it's possible. A connection that doesn't drain, that doesn't require performance, that doesn't leave you feeling more alone than before. And when you couldn't find that, you chose solitude, not as defeat, as refusal, a refusal to participate in the degradation of human connection, a refusal to reduce yourself to content, a refusal to trade your inner peace for the illusion of belonging. This is what they can't afford for you to understand. Your solitude is rebellion. Every hour you spend alone, unplugged, unavailable, you're withdrawing from their economy. The attention economy, the anxiety economy, the endless growth at all costs economy that feeds on your insecurity. Because a person at peace with themselves doesn't consume the way they need you to consume. A person who has found fulfillment within doesn't chase it in products, in status symbols, in the next experience designed to photograph well. A person who is comfortable with silence doesn't need the constant stimulation they're selling. You've become economically useless to them, and that makes you powerful. This is why the system pathologizes solitude, why it insists that healthy people are extroverted, social, constantly engaged, why it treats your preference for quiet as something to fix. Because if everyone discovered what you've discovered, that peace lives in the pause, that clarity comes in the quiet, that you are enough without the external validation, the entire structure would collapse. They need you anxious. They need you inadequate. They need you looking outside yourself for solutions to problems they invented. Your retreat threatens that. Your contentment with less stimulation, less socializing, less stuff. It's a virus in their system. It suggests that maybe the endless pursuit is pointless, that maybe the rat race is a cage, that maybe the whole game is rigged, and the only way to win is to stop playing. And you've stopped playing, not because you're weak, not because you couldn't keep up, but because you saw through it. You saw that their success is exhaustion wearing a smile, that their connection is performance art, that their happiness is a mask covering the same emptiness they're accusing you of having. The difference? You're facing out your emptiness. You're sitting with it. You're discovering that it's not empty at all. It's spacious. It's where creativity lives, where insight emerges, where the Gensha self finally has room to breathe. They're running from theirs, filling it with noise, with people, with anything that lets them avoid the confrontation with themselves. So when they judge your solitude, remember, they're not judging you. They're defending themselves from the question your life is asking. What if you don't need all this? What if you don't need their approval? What if you don't need to be constantly out there to be valid, valuable, real? What if the quiet life, the inner life, is not the consolation prize, but the actual prize? These questions are dangerous. They unravel the entire narrative they've been sold. They suggest that maybe the people who seem to have it all figured out are the ones who are lost, and maybe the ones who withdrew, the introverts, the hermits, the hypersensitive souls who couldn't stomach the superficiality. Maybe they're the ones who found the way out. Your solitude is not escape. It's kalu exodus. So here's where it all comes together. Here's where you stop apologizing, because everything you've been taught to see is weakness. Your sensitivity, your selectivity, your need for solitude, these are not flaws in your design. They are features. They are your superpowers in a world that's trying to numb itself to death. Your sensitivity, it's not fragility. It's one perception. You feel more because you see more. You pick up on the currents beneath the surface, the tensions people pretend aren't there, the lies wrapped in politeness, the pain hiding behind laughter. This is not a curse. This is clarity. And yes, it hurts. Yes, it's exhausting. Yes, it makes you want to retreat from a world that feels like it's screaming at frequencies only you can hear. But this is your gift. This is what allows you to create, to understand, to connect. When you choose to, at depths most people will never reach. Your selectivity? It's not antisocial behavior. It's discernment. It's knowing that your energy is finite and precious, that not every invitation deserves a yes. That quality matters infinitely more than quantity. You're not being difficult. You're being intentional. You're protecting your inner world from contamination. You're guarding your peace like the sacred thing it is, because you've learned what they haven't. That saying yes to everyone wish to mean saying no to yourself. And your solitude, your blessed, necessary, life-giving solitude, that's not isolation. That's cultivation. That's where you grow the self that the world cannot touch, where you build the foundation that cannot be shaken by their opinions, where you forge the identity that doesn't need their validation to know its worth. This is inner power, real power, not the kind that dominates others, but the kind that liberates you from needing anything from others. Not indifference, not coldness, but sovereignty. The power to stand alone and feel whole, to walk away from what doesn't serve you without guilt, to choose yourself without apology. Listen, they will never give you permission to be this free. They will never tell you it's okay to prioritize your inner world over their outer expectations. They will never applaud your choice to be selectively social, deeply private, fiercely protective of your solitude, because your freedom reminds them of their captivity. So you have to give yourself permission. You have to become your own authority. You have to decide, right now in this moment, that your way of being is not wrong. It's just Chatroit's different. And different is not less. Different is not broken. Different is simply different. The world needs extroverts. It needs connectors and networkers and people who thrive in the chaos. But it also needs you. It needs the thinkers, the observers, the ones who go deep instead of wide, the ones who feel everything and then translate those feelings into art, into insight, into wisdom. It needs the people who are brave enough to sit in silence and face what's there, who are willing to do the inner work that most people are too terrified to begin, who can hold space for complexity, for nuance, for the uncomfortable truths that don't fit in a tweet. It needs the hermits who return from the mountain with messages the valley dwellers need to hear. But here's the thing. You cannot deliver that message if you're still apologizing for who you are. You cannot share your gift if you're still calling it a curse. You cannot illuminate the path for others if you're still hiding your light to make them comfortable. So stop shrinking. Stop explaining. Stop defending your need for solitude as if it's something to be ashamed of. Own it. Claim it. Celebrating it. Your alone time is not loneliness. It's laboratory work. It's where you're becoming the highest version of yourself. Your sensitivity is not weakness. It's antenna. It's how you receive the signals that others miss. Your withdrawal is not defeat. It's strategy. It's how you conserve energy for what actually matters. You are not too much. You are not too little. You are not too quiet, too distant, too selective, too anything. You are exactly what you need to be to fulfill your purpose. And your purpose is not to fit in. Your purpose is not to make them comfortable. Your purpose is not to prove that you're normal. Your purpose is to become yourself so completely, so unapologetically, so radiantly that you give others permission to do the same. That's the power they don't want you to access. The power of complete self-acceptance, complete self-possession, complete freedom from their judgment. Because once you have that, you're unstoppable. Not because you're fighting them, but because you're no longer fighting yourself. And a person who is at peace with their own nature, their own rhythms, their own needs, their own truth, that person cannot be manipulated, cannot be controlled, cannot be convinced that they need something external to be complete. That person is whole. And wholeness? That's the revolution. So bring it all home now. Bring it back to the quiet room, the closed door, the dimmed lights. Bring it back to you, sitting there, alone, but not lonely. Present, but not performing. Still, but not stagnant. This is your sanctuary, not your prison. This is where you come to shed the weight of the world, where you peel off the masks, the expectations, the accumulated heaviness of being misunderstood, where you finally, mercifully, get to be just you. No explanations required, no justifications necessary, no performance expected. Just breathing, just being, just existing in your own space without apology. And in that space, in that sacred, protected, carefully guarded space, something miraculous happens. You remember who you were before they told you who to be. You remember what you loved before they told you what to want. You remember your own voice before it got drowned out by theirs. This is not escapism. This is reclamation. You are reclaiming yourself from a culture that tried to colonize even your inner world. You are taking back territory that was always yours, but that you were taught to surrender. Your thoughts, your feelings, your time, your energy, your attention, all of it returned to you. All of it devoted to the only project that truly matters, becoming who you actually are. And here's what nobody tells you about this path, this hermit's journey, this sacred solitude. It gets easier, not because the world changes, not because people suddenly understand, but because you change. You solidify, you root. You become so anchored in your own truth that their storms can't shake you anymore. Their judgments roll off. Their concerns become background noise. Their invitations stop feeling like obligations and start feeling like just invitations, which you can accept or decline based on what serves you, not what appeases them. You develop what the Buddhists call equanimity, what the Stoics called ataraxia, what Jung called psychological integration, a deep, unshakable peace that comes from knowing yourself completely and accepting that self unconditionally. Not arrogance, not superiority, just ease, the ease of finally being home in your own skin, in your own life, in your own carefully chosen solitude. And from that place of ease, something beautiful happens. Your relationships improve, not because you suddenly become social, but because when you usabudu engage, you engage fully, authentically, without resentment, without the underlying exhaustion of forcing something that doesn't fit. You stop collecting people and start meeting them. The few, the rare, the ones who can match your depth, the ones who don't need you to be different, the ones who understand that your solitude isn't rejection of them, it's respect for yourself. And those connections, they're worth more than 1,000 shallow friendships. They're worth more than a packed social calendar. They're worth the years you spent alone, learning to recognize real connection when you finally find it. Because you can only connect deeply with others once you've connected deeply with yourself. This is the paradox they never taught you. The path to meaningful relationship runs through solitude. The way to truly be with others is to first learn how to be with yourself. You've been doing the work, all those hours alone, all those nights in, all that time they said you were wasting. You were investing. You were building the foundation that cannot be shaken. And now you know something they may never learn. That home is not a place, it's a state of being. That peace is not found in external circumstances. It's cultivated in internal awareness. That you don't need to be understood by everyone. You only need to understand yourself. This is the integration. This is where all the pieces come together. Your sensitivity is accepted. Your solitude is honored. Your difference is celebrated by you, which is the only celebration that matters. You are not broken. You never were. You are not missing out. You're opting out of what doesn't serve you to opt in to what does. You are not antisocial. You are selectively social, intentionally intimate, deliberately deep. You are the hermit, the mystic, the one who knows that sometimes the most profound connection is the one you have with the silence. And in that silence, you have found what they're all searching for in the noise, yourself. So if you've made it this far, then you already know. You know that this wasn't really about introversion, or solitude, or sensitivity. It was about permission. Permission to honor your nature instead of apologizing for it. Permission to choose depth over breadth, quality over quantity, being over seeming. Permission to walk a different path, not because you can't handle the main road, but because you've seen where it leads, and you want something more, something real, something true, something yours. And maybe, for the first time, you're allowing yourself to believe that your way isn't wrong. It's just rare. And rarity isn't pathology. It's you had a value, gamrang. The world doesn't need another person pretending to be extroverted, forcing smiles at gatherings, collecting superficial connections, like trading cards. The world needs what only you can offer when you're fully yourself. Your depth, your perception, your hard-won wisdom from all those hours spent in conversation with your own soul. So keep the door closed when you need to. Keep the lights dim. Keep the world at a distance. Not forever, not out of fear, but out of respect for the sacred work you're doing in that space. The work of becoming, the work of integrating, the work of building a self so solid that when you do open that door, you bring something genuine into the world, instead of just another performance. This is your journey, and it's not a straight line. Some days you'll feel powerful in your solitude. Some days you'll doubt everything and wonder if they're right, if something really is wrong with you. But come back to this. You are not broken. You are not missing anything. You are simply tuned to a different frequency. And on that frequency, there are others. Not many, perhaps, but enough. The fellow seekers, the other hermits, the ones who recognize the light in your eyes because they've been to the same darkness and found the same illumination. You'll find each other, not in the crowds, not at the parties, but in the quiet moments, in the meaningful conversations, in the spaces between words where real understanding lives. Until then, you have yourself, and that is not nothing. That is everything. Jung said it best. The meeting of two personalities is like the contact of two chemical substances. If there is any reaction, both are transformed. But you cannot transform anyone, and they cannot transform you until you know what substance you're bringing to the contact. Solitude shows you that substance. It reveals you to yourself. It burns away everything false until only truth remains. And that truth, that's what the world needs from you. Not your participation in their circus. Not your performance of normalcy. Not your pretense that everything is fine, when you can feel that it isn't. The world needs your truth, your particular vision, your unique translation of the human experience. But first, you have to find it. And you can only find it where you've been finding it all along. In the silence, in the solitude, in the sacred space you've carved out between yourself and the noise. So honor it, protect it, return to it as often as you need. And when they ask why you're always alone, you can tell them the truth. Because that's where I become most fully myself. And when they say you're missing out, you can smile. Not with arrogance, but with the quiet knowing of someone who has discovered what they're still searching for, and say, I'm not missing out. I'm tuning in to something deeper, something truer, something that can only be heard in the quiet. And one day, when they're exhausted from all the running, all the performing, all the endless seeking outside themselves, maybe they'll ask you how you found peace, and you'll tell them what you've learned. I stopped looking for it out there. I started cultivating it in here. That's the message. That's the transmission. That's what your solitude has been preparing you to share. Not as preaching, not as judgment, but as testimony, as living proof that there is another way, that you can opt out of the madness and opt into meaning, that you can be alone without being lonely, that you can be quiet without being broken, that you can be different and be exactly right. So here's what I want you to do. If this resonated with you, if you felt seen, understood, recognized in these words, then leave a comment, not a long one, just 3 words. I am home. That's it. That's the signal. That's how we find each other in the noise. And if you want to go deeper, if you want to continue this journey of reclaiming your solitude as strength, I've written a book that explores these themes even further. The link is in the description. It's called The Inner Citadel: Reclaiming Solitude in a Distracted World. Consider it an extension of this conversation, a deeper dive into the philosophy, the psychology, the practice of building an unshakable inner life. But whether you read it or not, remember this: you are not alone in your aloneness. You are not wrong in your withdrawal. You are not broken in your sensitivity. You are awake. You are aware. You are becoming. And that is the most courageous thing a human being can do in a world that profits from your distraction. Stay sovereign. Stay selective. Stay true. The hermit's path is not easy, but it is yours, and that makes it sacred.